microwave.
All right, it's 9 o'clock.
At least before.
All righty, it is 9 a.m. We shall call a study session to order. Start with the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Who's standing there?
I was waiting for everybody else to be standing out the corner of my eye. All right, so no invocation. Bonnie, if we can have a roll call, please.
Walter?
Here.
Spence? Here. Nelson?
Here.
Morris? McAllister?
Here.
Henschel?
I am here.
Flynn?
Here.
Andrews?
Here.
Seifert?
Here. Fantastic. Penny couldn't make it today. She did reach out. So I'm going to guess that nobody here is from the public wants a public comment. Raise your hand if you want to do a public comment before Bonnie goes through that whole spiel.
Yeah.
All right, moving right along. I need approval of the agenda, please.
Move to approve the agenda as presented.
Support. All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Hansel, support by Commissioner McAllister to approve the agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Fantastic. We're going to move right to 5A discussion. Administrator Alger, you want to tee this up?
Certainly. I don't have it here, so I'm going to have to do it at the podium, if that's
Yeah, it's all right by me. I'm sorry, is it all right by you, Vice Chairman?
all right. Pardon me?
Just being
All right,
smart.
so
I'm giving TJ a hard time.
as part of our budget process, we've been asked to do presentations, but we have 27 offices and departments. We have 10 elected offices that have 20 elected officials, just to kind of set the stage as to what you're up for between now and the end of the year. So we started, we're going to begin from the people that you already pretty much have an idea of what we do on a daily basis, but we thought it'd be refreshing to give you a 10 to 15 minute presentation on the different aspects of the third floor. And so we're going to kick it off. I will say that we have a noon meeting on the peninsula that Mr. Bird and I are going to have to exit for. So in the event that we are not able to complete by then, we're going to ghost you for a while. So what is an administrator? We'll go through this in a little more depth, but truly there's only a couple ways allowed by state law to handle an administrator. The one that we use is a Chief Administrative Officer model, where you as a Board of Commissioners can, by a majority vote, hire an administrator to manage the day-to-day operations of the county. And there are other models as well, but this is the model that we've always used, and it's a highly suggested model. There are counties in the state of Michigan that do not have an administrator. The closest one to us until recently was Kalkaska County. Their clerk managed all the administrative duties throughout the county. Just a few of the things that we do in administration, and we'll go through this. Key responsibilities are essentially we do what the board tells us to do. This is the legislative body for the Grand Traverse County residents. You set policy, you set procedure. We're the executive branch sort of that implements all of that activity throughout the county. That includes budgeting and finance. That's one of our main key roles, personnel and human resources, policy implementation, and strategic planning. If you have any questions, please jump in. Oversight and coordination. As I mentioned previously, you have 10 elected offices, 20 elected officials. So in a city form of government or a village form of government, you have one chief administrative officer. Everybody's in a straight line underneath that administrative office. That is not the case with us, and you'll see in a few moments the organizational chart that shows how diverse that is. So the importance of administration at the county level is we have to have relationships with our elected officials. We have to support them and understand what the county's role is within that relationship and what the county's obligations are. So we monitor compliance with state and federal regulations. Specifically, you're going to hear from Mr. Bott in a few minutes. He is highly involved in making sure that we're spending dollars appropriately, and we are currently in the middle of an audit that will make sure that we are. We also act as a liaison between the public, the Board of Commissioners, and other governmental entities. We go to MTA, we meet with township officials, we meet with village officials, we interact with them on a daily basis to make sure that we understand what they are doing, what they need, and if they have anything from the county in terms of a resource that is required from us. Currently, we are working with the village of Kingsley and the township of Paradise through a discussion about a economic development project that we really have no involvement or inclusion in yet, but we're trying to work through that matter so it doesn't come before the Board of Commissioners. As you well know, they've asked for an annexation ruling, and we're working through a 425 agreement that may get us to a point of solution versus having to come to the board for an annexation discussion. We also maintain the transparency and public engagement process. We manage websites. We have FOIA responsibilities. If people want records, they typically come to the administration to make sure that the request is received, and we are ultimately responsible for making sure that those requests are granted and that the citizens get the information that they wish to have. Organizationally, I've already kind of covered this, but we have 17 departments, 10 elected officers, 23 appointed boards, and about 570 county employees. So with that, that's a busy day in administration. This is our organizational chart, and everybody in green is an elected office. And as you can see, there's different partnerships here. So if you go across the green list, you have the Board of Commissioners that you have 2 employees. One is the administrator, one is the health officer. The clerk, we are considered a co-employer with the clerk, the treasurer, the register of deeds, the sheriff, the drain commissioner, and the prosecuting attorney. So we hold co-employer relationships with all of those elected offices and elected officials. The courts, we are exclusively a fiscal or a funding agent. The courts are the employer of their staff. Now that means we still hold all of their employment records, but as you've recently seen, the courts are not subject to FOIA. They have asked us to not ever release personnel information from the court employees' personnel files without their approval, and we've recently signed on to that. This is the administration's organizational chart. I can't remember exactly how many direct reports are up there, but there's a lot. These are either directly responsible to the administrator, or we have employees within our department, and those employees are myself, Chris Forsyth as a deputy, Jenny McKellar as our special projects coordinator, Lisa and Maxwell are support services, Maxwell through community development, and Lisa is the administrative assistant. Lisa truly does manage the comings and goings of that office. Challenges for us, we just adapt to population growth. Enhancing digital services is always in our forefront, and building community trust and transparency is critical for the success of the county. To this end, we have embraced technology. We are continuing to change as much as we can to make sure that we are keeping up with the technological changes and the benefits associated. We are also out in the community a lot. We've done some things this year and last year to make sure that we are in front of our residents in our community, preaching what the county does, talking to them about what they would like to see, and trying to improve that trust and transparency through those initiatives. Essentially, that's our conclusion. I tried to keep it into 10 minutes as a model to the presenters following. Any questions about what administration is or does?
Setting the bar high there. Any questions for Mr. Elger?
I have a question.
Shocker.
Could you back up to the org chart, the one below it? Well, and it's sort of both of these. Gives, raises a concern, as you mentioned there, by my quick counting, there's 19 people who report directly to you. That is a lot of people for anybody to manage, and that doesn't count any of the other elected officials. Not that they answer to you, but they engage directly with you probably as their first point of contact when they engage with the county. Is that sustainable? Is that a good idea? Does this board Does anyone else think that's a lot of direct reports for anybody to manage? Are there strategies available to consolidate so that you have interim deputies manage or consolidation so that you don't have as many direct reports? That's as much a question for this board.
I
I'm
don't really
sitting
see
over
any
here.
issues.
I know, right?
I can see everybody.
So
Well-
there are other models. I was at Mako last week, and Kent County is a county that is significantly more populated and bigger than we are. But Kent County uses a model where they have the administrator who answers to, I think they have 21 commissioners in Kent County. They use a model where they have multiple deputy administrators, and they divide that house by, depending on who you are and which county, and Kent's not the only one. They either have like a Health and Human Services deputy director, and then they have an administrative deputy director. And the Health and Human Services would handle everything with the health department, animal control, everything that's on that side of the house, and then the other deputy would handle everything administratively, finance, et cetera. We've had times where, in our history in this county, where we've not had a deputy administrator. Mac McClellan was a long-serving deputy, and then after he left, they didn't refill it for quite a while. So, yes, we need to, there is a lot of that going on, if I can get back to the 19. It's a challenge for us to actively manage and administrate and lead these folks. Like we said previously, for me to see more than half of these, I have to leave this building and go somewhere else. So we do have a shortfall in that regard. When I talk to like the DPW folks over on Lafreniere, they want to see us more. They want more input. They don't necessarily feel like they're included in the county, et cetera. Health department, very much the same. So I actively have to make time in my schedule to go to Lafreniere and interact with these folks, not to mention the elected side of the house.
So do you think on consolidation of everything and putting everything in one building would make it more efficient for you then?
It would make it more efficient for me to do that. I'm not 100% certain, and this board is certainly the board that directs that ultimately, but the efficiencies recognized by administration and finance being in the same place as the majority of our employees and departments definitely is a benefit.
How many deputy administrators does Kent County have?
2. And Oakland County has 4, last I checked. So
And
it
how many
depends.
commissioners does Oakland County have? Do you know?
I think 21.
Oh, okay.
They're big counties.
Where I know that we've been discussing consolidation, in the last few weeks, so that's not going to be any time really in the near future. What do you feel is a short-term solution for what you're feeling as shortfalls?
I could work more.
Clone?
I like your
Cloning
style.
yourself?
No, honestly, I think that to the degree possible, we need to just focus on how we communicate, make sure that our communication is effective, that we're not jamming our own selves up by unnecessary interactions. Like if you've been blind copied or copied on emails, that's just useless information. We're trying to work towards, hey, let's keep it concise, let's keep it precise, let's make sure that you're targeting the audience that you need to target and not jam everybody up. In the long-term solution, I could conceive of a different structure of administration where we have an additional staff member or 2 that helps out all of the efforts that we are engaged in, not just internally, but also the external engagements that we have with the community. They want, our local units want our help, and they are asking for help. And sometimes between Chris, Jenny, Maxwell, and I, we can't do it. And we can't be there or can't be there to help them with what they need. Ashley?
How often, I know you talk about going over to Lafreniere quite a bit in person. How often do you just have, a Zoom meeting or a Teams meeting with someone rather than taking the time to drive all the way over there and drive all the way back? I know sometimes, many times, it's more effective in person, but in terms of efficiency, is that being looked at? Speaking of, digital efficiencies.
We use Teams quite a bit within the county. Anytime there's an external member joining us, we usually use Teams. But in an effort to lead an organization, I do find that it's much more beneficial to be in front of them, being able to ask them, what do you need? How are you doing? Just feeling that back and forth, Teams takes that away to a degree. But the management, you can manage through a meeting virtually anytime. We do it weekly, a couple times a week. It's just, yeah.
So I feel, people ask me, we were at Coffee with the County yesterday morning, and a big part of what we're talking about is relationships with people, not the relationship with whatever your two-dimensional screen of choice is. And I think that's what Administrator Alger is alluding to, and if he's not, then I'm sure he'll correct me. But we are spending an awful lot of time and dollars talking about physical growth, buildings and things like that, and I think we're remiss not to discuss exactly what Administrator Alger and Commissioner Andrews has brought up. We talked a little bit about leveraging technology and AI in the future, but barely. I think it was a 25-minute conversation. I think Rob did most of the talking, if I remember correctly, or it was me. And but also, this is the same thing, that we're going to grow. We're not going to get smaller. We're not. And we're foolish to build a building or change our physical plant structure and not try to accommodate personnel, not just technology. So, and I don't mean to take this over today. I think it definitely needs to be a conversation we have later on, because I see things, as we all do, and it's no fault of our administrative staff, that are like things that we could do better. And we always go back and forth about, are we hiring it out? Are we hiring a person in-house? I imagine the solution is probably a hybrid of that. While I have the floor, I have to apologize to the Board of Commissioners and to Administrator Alger. It was my responsibility to make sure that we did his yearly review in a timely fashion, and it's my fault that we did not do that. So we love you, Nate. You're doing a great job. There you go.
There's your review.
So we will have a conversation later on about I'm gonna propose we farm it out, so it's on somebody else's calendar, not ours to miss, because we owe it not only to taxpayers, but we also owe it to Administrator Alger to be timely. And that was my fault, and I dropped the ball. Mr. Henschel.
Administrator Alger, with regards to direct reports, my experience being chair for 6 years, working very closely with you, as you have probably mostly informal, but perhaps formalized goals and metrics with each of your direct reports that you touch base with them. Is that accurate?
Certainly.
Do they all know what's expected of them and when they're going to meet with you next to report on what's expected of them?
That is something I can do better. I do it through informal means. Honestly, it's a conversation with my direct reports and how I function and how I want them to function. I think that is a good thing for most people. They can pick up what you're putting down, but there are, based on personality, they don't understand as clearly and succinctly as they may if I actually put it into writing. My concern with writing is once you put something down in writing, it's in writing. And if they fail to meet that metric for whatever reason, it's there. And we have used that very effectively throughout the county to make sure that people who are not performing up to speed, to get them up to speed. But mostly, Commissioner Henschel, it is informal communication. I talk to these directors and everybody on a daily basis, but it's mostly just verbal and informal.
So when we talk about what you could do better, and you said work more, but you sound like a small business owner, by the way, because that's what we do. But I think Finance Director Bott, Emergency Manager Greg Bird, HR, they are all experts in their field. All of your direct reports are experts in their field. They're interacting with their associations. The HR people are getting together with other HR people, and we know Director Bird is going to events and conventions, and see, they're all experts in what they do. And they all have reports that are due, and for example, the audit that Mr. Bott puts, make sure it happens. And if those things didn't happen, there would be like a red flag, like, hey, this didn't happen, or the emergency management plan didn't get filed, whatever that is. Perhaps something you could do better would simply be to be a little more formalized with a sheet that, these are the things we expect from each of these direct reports. And it gives you, it's just something written down to make sure you put a check in that box to make sure you're being effective in leading them towards their goals And then as you meet with them, you know, every month, every quarter or whatever, and talk about, okay, what are some goals for your department? Okay, those are good goals. Let's touch back on those. Here's the steps you need to take, and let's get back in another month or 3 months. So those are my thoughts on being an effective administrator.
I appreciate that. So the success of the county is not just the administration. The 19 people that you have on the screen in front of you, they're wonderful department heads. They're very good. They're experts in their field, as Commissioner Henschel just said. And I do not believe in micromanaging. I believe in putting people in place that can do the job and giving them what they need to succeed and supporting them as they go through their work. I don't micromanage any of those 19 people. It is a relationship that we have, but if I had a concern about Ms. Kinsey's operation in HR, she would know it. Quite frankly, I can almost assure you that she knows the opposite of that, that we know that she's fabulous at what she does. And any other person on this chart, they do the work and they keep the county out of trouble, and they're very good at what they do. So this, in some sense of the word, is the easiest job that I have, is trusting these folks to do their job.
So do you need help?
Are you offering?
Not
I need
personally.
someone to put the boards in, Dan. There's always an opportunity for us to grow. There's always an opportunity for us to do better, and we owe it to our staff. We owe it to you and the county to always have that look. What's next? What's next? What's next? And if we lose that, we'll be in trouble.
So one way I look at this is I try not to look at the pictures of the people or the names under the positions, and instead think of the roles of the various people, to keep it impersonal, and also to acknowledge that changes happen. And it appears to me, for example, that all of the staff in your office report directly to you. None, to my view, appear to report to the deputy. Right. Which is an interesting model, right? Like there's no direct reports to the deputy. And I guess my question is, when's the last time this org chart from the administration perspective was overseen? And then relatedly, if we're gonna go through an outside review, is there an opportunity to just think down the line, can we improve this? And how do we get some suggestions from fresh perspective? And it has nothing to do with anyone, but every one of these department heads and people, even if they met with you for an hour to talk about big picture, it would take you a month to cycle through 19 people. That's every single day meeting with the direct report and then you're never meeting with the drain commissioner, for example, or the clerk, who might have needs as well, right? So it just doesn't feel sustainable to me, and I don't think we are the subject matter experts, to use Commissioner Henschel's term, to solve it, but it is a red flag to me, especially as we're going into a potential facilities consolidation discussion, to have a parallel discussion about org chart set up, and maybe the way to do that is for this board to take up an outside consultant to help both with the review and to get your input and perspective on how we might streamline it a little bit, so you can carry more of our water on the big projects that we want you to be carrying water on, yeah, in addition to the day-to-day administration.
I'm certainly open to that discussion. Chris and I have had these discussions previously. I can tell you that what is reflected here is largely how we split the baby back in 2018. So I was the undersheriff, Chris was the deputy civil counsel for the prosecuting attorney's office, and Dean was the finance director, and we found ourselves in the absence of an administrator. So we were asked to be part of a three-legged stool, and when we did that, we split that role up, and it's still reflected today. Chris is responsible for everything kind of external and large projects. He focuses on that. Dean obviously is in charge of finances, and we just haven't changed it. But I'm not opposed in any way, shape, or form to, I think by job description, actually, Chris, you actually have.
Yeah, I do know the history. It goes back to the early 90s when Ross Childs was the administrator. He brought in Mac McCullen, and it really was, Mac, I'm really busy with day-to-day stuff. Mac, you handle special projects, community engagement, community development. So that model has been followed for the last 30-plus years. That is a model, and there are different models. I'm familiar with 3 different tasks that a deputy county administrator does. One is exactly that, special projects, community development, et cetera. The other is more focused on a specific area of the operation, which is the Kent County model. The deputy administrators are broken into different functions. For example, one is focused on health, human services. And then the third model is the chief operating officer, so that the org chart is changed so that Nate is CEO, and then the deputy is the COO, and then the COO is responsible for day-to-day oversight of every department. So there's no right or wrong answer, but that in a nutshell are the 3 different models that I'm familiar with.
So does our model need to change?
Potentially. I think that as we walk through everything that's going on with our county, that I see that the commissioners have much more activity, they have much more interest in moving things forward, doing different things. So I do expect that more interaction with you on behalf of the administration is important, and I think that we could benefit from a change.
Commissioner Hensel.
Thank you. I think it's always good to take a look at our model and how we operate. I would suggest that leading that discussion should always be outcomes and what is it we want to accomplish if we were to add another deputy administrator or whatever the change, or have some people report to this person instead of that person. What is the outcome we're after? Are we after getting more efficient or more resilient, as Commissioner Andrews suggested? That needs to be center stage in all those discussions. We're not going to make changes for the sake of changes. It just upsets the apple cart and nothing gets any better. What do we want to make better?
So I'll respond to that. I know Commissioner Spence had her hand up, but just for a dialogue, it's a study session. One outcome that I think I am concerned about and focused on is coordinated planning, both internal and external, in terms of, for example, I see Board of Public Works is on here. We've got Maxwell in community development. We know building off, code is got a whole set of tasks related to dealing with growth and construction in our community. There are elements of this, of our org chart that I don't see where in the org chart we are looking ahead. To your point, what is the long-term growth projection? Do we just take the past line and keep drawing it straight? Do we take the last 10 years and draw it straight, or do we take the last 100 years and extend it? Those are not, where is that growth happening? It's probably, the census is showing that Traverse City is flat and the communities around it are growing, in the shoulder area. So how does that play into where, a deputy administrator is focusing on outside projects, and where is, construction code, satelliting and building? It just seems to me that we do have some gaps that aren't necessarily built into the system, the level of coordination. It's too much for one person. It's just too much for one person to be able to see everything that's happening on a daily basis and be thinking 5 to 50 years down the line. So it's not just, is it working? It's like, it's harder to see what's not there than just evaluate what's in front of us. To your point, and I think it's a fair question, like, what are we hoping to get by touching the org chart?
But don't you think delegation is a key to everything? If I'm the administrator, not Nate, if I'm the head of whatever, I would delegate what I cannot handle to either Chris or department heads on that end of it.
I don't think delegation alone can solve all the problems. I think there are too many problems that are strategic in nature that are going to require the administrator's involvement. For example, if we have an employee who is having disciplinary issues, but it's a high-level employee, the administrator's going to be involved. If it has policy issues that are going to be on the front lines of the paper, the administrator's going to be involved. He can't delegate away every decision. In fact, I think that's a lot to ask to just handle it. The health director is asking for help because the outcome is too consequential for the health department director alone to make that decision. And so then who do they go to? They have to go to Nate. And every single one of those decisions is only and always going to Nate. And I think that's to me, the bottleneck where there are every single day, there are big problems happening that just saying, we can't just delegate them. I assume, and correct me if I'm wrong.
You're not wrong. We focus on what is going to impact, and one of our obligations is to focus on how is this going to impact us publicly. And we take that very seriously. And if we see something coming that is going to potentially disrupt our progress because it's going to be public, we get involved in that immediately. And we manage that situation from start to finish. And that's one of the roles that we have. I can give you a recent example about something we don't know. We hired a community development coordinator. Chris was doing a wonderful job managing projects throughout the county, and he's been the point of contact. Jenny's been doing a great job. She's a point of contact for special projects. We hired Maxwell. His bucket was filled immediately. There was obviously a need out in the community and with our local governments. There was a need. We put somebody out there, and they took advantage of that opportunity. So we already recognize there's the need. I talked to Donna this morning about if you don't have a frozen custard machine in the basement, nobody eats frozen custard. But once you put it there, now it's an expectation. So we've got to kind of manage both sides of that issue and grow responsibly and make sure that we're not getting over our skis. Commissioner Spence.
Yeah, it's my turn. I almost forgot what I was going to ask. So I'd like to know what our deputy administrator does as far as external projects. I think it would be a good idea to redo this chart, freshen it up. That was my first thought. And then I want to reflect on our tour of the facilities. I think that says a lot about what we need. We took the facilities tour. We saw a lot of things that have been neglected and overseen and haven't been, well, I believe in prevention, right? A little bit of prevention helps to avoid where we are with this building. I mean, I don't look at this building the same way anymore because things haven't been kept up and they haven't been refreshed and planned for. I think that's where we can use that as an example as to where our needs are. Just look at this building, that a lot of things have been neglected and not taken care of. I mean, I'm talking about things like carpeting, the things that Bonnie brought up at public comment at our last meeting. We need prevention, and with that, we need planning, and with that, that I think that's what you're asking about. Like, what's the goal here? What's the goal? What's our objective? Our objective is to not wait until we need to address such big issues with this building.
Yep. I agree.
And I would say a planning department would be really good for the county, but we can save that for a later date. But I do believe that having a county planning department dissolved was not a good idea, in my opinion.
Any more comments, Mr. Hanson?
I guess I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up the topic of tasks expanding to fit the time allotted. And I've had experience in small business where you bring someone in to help a department and all of a sudden you get the same output, the same exact outcome with more labor. So we've really got to watch that. keeping the belt tight, and do we really need, if we throw a whole nother position into administration, for example, we have to have a measurable outcome, because they can do the same exact work they're doing with more people just being happier about it, or just feeling better about it, because we've got a bigger team, and, we're doing more candy striping at the other locations. But if, at the end of the day, we serve the public, we serve the taxpayer, and if they're getting the same exact value out of, 6 positions as they would 5, then we did something wrong.
I concur, and also on Minister Alger's comments with the frozen custard machine, is that what it was?
Yeah.
I want one.
Me too, but, maybe not custard, margarita maybe. But, if we start doing things for others and the expectation is there that we're gonna be there to do that for them instead of them doing it for themselves. And I know that sounds kind of ridiculous, but just in the few short years that I've been on the board, I've come to realize that there are some folks that think that the county should do everything for them, and they want to have no skin in the game except with a nice little name tag on it. And that's pervasive throughout the county. Not every entity that we deal with is like that, but I got 3 that come to the top of my head right off the bat. So, to Commissioner Henschel's point, we're gonna have to sit down and talk about where we're gonna draw the line. It's like, hey, we're willing to help out, we wanna grow, but change for the sake of change doesn't do anything but waste taxpayers' dollars, and that's not something I'm all for either. I appreciate that there are needs out there, but sometimes those needs need to be met by somebody other than the county. Is there any more questions for Mr.
My
Alger?
question is, do you need something?
Margarita machine, what are you listening to?
Yeah, we're always looking for the next thing.
I'm gonna ask it 3 times, but I
This
don't get the
board
right
has been
answer.
very supportive of that. My question for you is, what do you want your county to look like in 20 to 25 years? I don't think you throw money at something just to throw money at something, but we have an opportunity to say, what do we want to look like? And the 9 of you are in the driver's seat. We have unprecedented opportunity. I keep saying this, and we have it. And it's, what do you want to do with what you have in front of you as an opportunity? I personally would love to leave my community in a better place than before I started. It's just a high-level goal, but there's all these subset goals underneath that. We want to care for our residents better. We want to improve services, all of those things. Right now, that's what you have as an opportunity, and we're the individuals that are supposed to implement that activity. So what do you want to do? What do you want to see? How do you want to change? We're just a tool. You're the group that comes up with the thought process behind it.
Very well said, thank you.
I agree, but we don't do the day-to-day work, which is the hard part, I think, is if you're looking at voice and vision, is I'm not in your shoes every day to see what you go through every day. So how can I help you to make sure that you achieve the goals that you want?
Yep.
So I think that's one thing. As a collective board, voice and vision is huge, but we can't see what you see every day because we're not there every day.
I completely appreciate that, and the way that you have supported administration, I think if we can continue that relationship, or in the event that we have a need, that we can feel comfortable saying, I want to raise a hand and say we need something, and you've always been supportive.
So my last comment to Commissioner McAllister's point, and I think it's well taken, is I don't think we're going to be able to answer that question by only asking the administrator. I think the only way we're going to have to get input from the department heads. What are they not getting? What do they think where they're, how accessible is it to get their questions answered? Are they, and I think that's going to take a review process that is involving somebody other than asking the administrator, is everybody doing all right? Because it's his job to say, to answer that question, yes. And I don't think we can, and it has nothing to do with the person. So anyway, I think we're going to have, when we do, it's through some process, an opportunity for the department heads to answer those questions, not as a criticism of the administrator, but just as a structural question, in my opinion.
Mr.
And you
Nelson?
have one.
What's that?
And you have one.
And I do.
So, and I think that's probably correct. As we've gone through on our agenda setting stuff, I think voice and vision are 2 things that are hard in department heads and stuff like that, So how do we get the information to best go forward, I guess, which is right to what she said.
Commissioner Nelson?
I think we're wasting our time here talking about it in this format without any prep, without a facilitator. I mean, I agree with Brian, like, what do you need? I think that's Mr. Elger, I think, has been good about being honest, in my experience, with this board, what he needs, what he's looking for. I think the department heads have a good relationship with him, from my experience. But if we're gonna start talking about these high level, what do we wanna look like 25 years from an administrative standpoint, just like we do for our buildings, we need to make that a purposeful exercise that we do with a facilitator. Have somebody talk to the department heads. I mean, filing 27 department heads through this room in meetings is probably not the best way to do that. I think having somebody who's a professional at this go out and talk to them, that's the way to do this. And I've been a fan of ongoing strategic planning. I think a strategic planning session is needed by this board anyway. But I think adding into that, or at a different time, having that be an afternoon event where we talk about, and we talk with our administrator, we look at other models, we get those up, we you know, you're not saying you're gonna change, but you look at different ways of doing it and decide if we're starting all over, is this how we would build it? Or is this not how we would build it? What would we change? I think that's the way to do it. We're kind of chasing our tails in here today and trying to get, we're not gonna make any decisions here today, and if we did, it would be ugly. So that's my suggestion.
Mr. Walter.
I agree with Commissioner Nelson in part, although I don't think this was a waste of time, but I would like to see a professional facilitator help connect with all the department heads and administration and look at, because when we did our strategic planning a couple years ago, maybe it was 2 years ago-ish, you know, we talked about, you know, the county has grown population-wise and we have all these new challenges and growth potential and challenges. And at that time, we talked about, well, what is the vision? Does that mean we're going to grow staff 10%? What does that look like? And at that time, it was like, no, we're not growing staff at the same rate that we're going to grow, that the county is growing right now. We have almost 600 employees. And yet, to Nelson's point about bringing in a facilitator, I think it would help for each department, along with administration, to envision, you know, as we're looking at facilities and looking at how we deliver services, how efficiently are we supporting our people and community partners? What does that look like in 10 years? Does that look like 10% more staff, or does that look like the same amount of staff but done in a different way? And I think those are the questions we need to have answered, is how are we going to deliver services, and do these new facilities, how do the, you know, ideas about new facilities fit into that model? Not necessarily assuming we're growing staff 10%. Maybe we are growing every department a little bit, but we also are bringing in new technology, and what does that investment look like? So I would love to see a facilitator help us walk through that as well in conjunction with the facilities master plan.
I concur. This is kind of meant to be just a cursory dive into the departments, and as we're moving ahead, and now we're getting off the path and going down a rabbit hole, which would be better suited for something else in another different time, and that applies to all of these, in my opinion. So we're going to move along. I believe there's an opportunity in everything that we see, but there's a time to explore every opportunity too, and today is not it. Thank you, Mr. Elger, for your time.
Thank you
and
all.
your report.
Would love to introduce Donna Kinsey, our HR director.
Good morning, Commissioners. How are you today?
Good, how are you?
Good. So I'm actually here to not present because I have this fabulous HR team sitting here, and they're actually going to present to you because I'm sure you guys are always sick of hearing from me. So I wanted to introduce the team, which I am very fortunate enough to lead, because I always say, best team I've ever had, and as we all know, I'm on the back nine because I'm old. So, yes. So anyways, in the back is Chris Reithel, and he is, I want to call a human resources a business partner. So he does everything that I don't want to do. No, I'm just kidding. And then, of course, Leanne, same thing. Chris does a lot of the recruiting, and Leanne, who's also going to be presenting, she does a lot of our FMLA leaves and benefit information. Kaylee up here is our payroll specialist, so you always want to make sure that Kaylee's very happy because she does your payroll stuff. Sydney's our newest member to our team. She just graduated from Michigan State, so go green. Right, so here we go. And Sydney does, again, basically, we kind of do everything in our department. When I first took the department over, we were very siloed. And I don't like that, because if somebody's gone for a while, we have to be able to make sure that we understand what they're doing, and we have to be able to jump in, because as I refer to our employees as customers, we're here to service our customers. And if I don't know what Leanne or Chris are working on, we can't service them to the best of our abilities. And then the last person is Sarah. And Sarah is a newer member to my team. When we established Workday, we brought on Sarah to do basically anything Workday related. So she doesn't just support HR, she supports Dean with anything finance. So I'm lucky to have her in my department, but she doesn't really do the human resources stuff. She does anything Workday related.
Not new to the county.
Huh?
But not new to Sarah's not new to the county.
No, Sarah's been with us for 25 years. She started when she was 4.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it is amazing. So without any further ado, I'm going to ask Chris and Leanne to come up and present to you human resources.
Good morning. Guess we'll get started here then. So, as you noticed, we've serviced about 900, or about 600, sorry, nearly 600 employees across the county departments, ensuring that we align with established policies, strategic workforce planning, and strong commitment to servicing the GT employees. That's what we really focus on.
So next handful of slides are going to talk about some of the highlights within the past year and a half that we've been doing, and so we'll break that up between Leanne and I. But really, rollout of some new policies that came out end of '24, beginning of this year. So ESTA, Michigan Earned Sick Time Act, was a big one, right? There's a lot of changes going on with that. It was changing up until the last hour, and so the team here did a lot of great work in keeping up on top of that. And then rolling that out, Leanne did a lot of work on the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act that came out. So we got that up to speed, and then a Code of Ethics policy, which this board is familiar with, right? So we got that approved and then submitted, and then that was all done through Workday, so the acknowledgement by employees to make sure that they're reviewing that and then signing off that they acknowledged it. And then some recruiting highlights that we had. So in '24, we hired 105 people total throughout the course of the year. So it's kind of averaged about 9 a month. And then right now, we're pacing above that, right? So through '25, through all of May, we're about 54 employees that we've hired and brought on, and so that's 10 employees a month that we're bringing on. So averaging higher than that, and you'll see in the next slide, Leanne's going to talk a little bit about separations and kind of why we have to stay in front of that. But and then continued focus on some of our hard-to-fill roles, right? So there are some positions within the county that are tougher to fill, that are tougher to hire for than others. So correction officers being one of those, public health nurses, we're having some hard times, homemaker aides within the Commission on Aging, right? So Deputy Road Patrol are also part of that too. So continue to look at those roles, and we've worked on some processes and really trying to streamline as best we can and updating the process a little bit, and also utilizing Workday to have hiring managers work through that process of recruiting and getting folks on board. So a lot of work there, and then streamline onboarding, Workday enhancements and updated orientation. So like I just said, we did a lot of the updates through Workday, a lot of help from Sarah with that, getting things online, and then just making sure that we continue to utilize Workday as much as possible.
And then we focused then on the employee relations with resolving with high impact conduct matters with structured progressive discipline. And as you can see with our separations in 2024 and 2025, through some of those structured progressive disciplines, we've had to have some involuntary separations as well. And then also investing in our mental health resources and wellness initiatives. We're seeing a spike in that, as I believe everyone is, with the wellness, but we are offering that through WeConnect. We have a couple programs that we offer, is like I said, the WeConnect, which kind of personalizes their programming if someone needs to have services. It offers them like peer meetings, it offers them with a peer counselor, and then we also offer through our Mutual of Omaha, which is our short-term disability and long-term disability carrier, we also offer free services through them. I think it's up to 3 per person and their family per year. And then if they need to continue to have services for those, then they can do that, but then it just gets insured to their insurance or billed to their insurance. As Chris has mentioned, that we hired about 105 new hires in 2024, which stayed on pace with our separations for 2024 because we had about 110 separations from there, as well as our year-to-date for separations is about the same at 54. And the majority of those, what we do is we do like to do the separation interviews with them. So what we do is if they come in, if they have anything that they would like to discuss, we always say it's not to say, okay, what's happening that maybe is a negative in your department, but there's also things that could be positive in other departments. And so what we can do is take some of those ideas, and if we know another department may be struggling, we may be able to also facilitate and maybe use some of those other ideas that people are saying that they see some good in the departments that they're leaving from. Our turnover rate is kind of staying on pace as well with our turnover rate for 2024 was 19%. And this year, right now, we're at almost 10% at 9.5%. So, and then over the course of last year, with those, it breaks it down to what you can see as the voluntary, the retirements, and the involuntary, and then for the 2025 year as well. Some of those retirements, when we talked about them last year and even this year, those were actually a little bit postponed because of the COVID pandemic. We've had a few of them that said that they postponed it just a little bit longer just because they were unsure of what was happening with the environment. So they kind of wanted to see financially what they needed to do, so that's why they hung on just a couple more years. So it'll be interesting for the rest of this year moving forward to see where those retirements go to as well if we see a spike from that point. And then our FMLA and short-term disability leaves that we've been on, you can see we had 51, and this year we have about 16. We do keep seeing growth on those, the increases on those. People are using that because we want to offer their benefits to them and make it possible for them to be off and have a sense of comfort to know that they can get paid as well as being off instead of trying to come back to work when they may not be healthy enough to come back.
So still with the highlights and some operational improvements, so kind of overall, right? Continue to utilize Workday, right? It's a big part of what we do every day. And so transitioning personnel files into that system. So we have a lot of paper files that we still have to work through, but then obviously anybody onboarding with us that's a new employee, all their stuff goes into that system. So continue to do that. Streamline tracking of leave of absence and FMLA requests. So again, we're just continuing to utilize Workday, utilize MyGTC, and we use that system for all those leaves of absences, and it's made tracking and pulling reports and looking at numbers a lot easier for us. And then did a lot of work in the last year and a half on creating some SOPs or standard operating procedures, so how-to tutorials, all again dealing with Workday. And so we've made that accessible to staff, and all employees can access that, and it's right in Workday, and you can go into your drive or your saved share folder essentially, and then pull that up, and it walks you through step by step on how to do things within the system. So it's been good, and there's 60 of those, so that's been the whole team working on that and putting those together. Workplace injuries, so we did a lot of work with that, putting that into Workday as well, and so this board got to hear the safety team talk a little bit about it. HR partnered with safety team, updated some of those policies, and then able to have all workplace incidents submitted into Workday, which has been really awesome. No longer, manager doesn't have to print a form out, fill it out, fax it in, send it in, right? And so it's a lot less paperwork. It eases the process. It streamlined it quite a bit. So we've had quite a bit of success with that, and folks have been utilizing it quite a bit this year, which has been good. Manager trainings. So it's also an opportunity for us, I think, but we've done quite a bit of that last year utilizing manager meetings. So the HR team has done FMLA trainings. We've done some time and attendance stuff. We've gone over expense reports, safety incident reports, things like that. So, and then we've also done some recruiting training for hiring managers in separate sessions. So I think it's an opportunity for us to continue to develop that as well throughout next year. But we did a lot of work with that this past year as well. And then there's a employee guidebook coming at some point that we'll be working on culture and clarity, and so partnering with admin on that, and so some highlights of things to come and things we're working on. So investment areas, things that we really focused on, and for this next budget cycle, and something that we're kind of having goals and moving towards, but utilizing so utilizing our strategic objectives, sorry, brain fart at the podium. But, so plan for sustainable growth. So all four of these items, I'll talk about two, and Leanne will talk about the other two, but plan for sustainable growth. So really, how do we, HR, advance and continue to kind of keep big picture in mind and what this board worked on for the strategic objectives. And so learning development, like I talked about, right, that's an opportunity for us. And so workshops, tuition reimbursement, professional development. So I think continuing to develop our staff to have trainings, whether that's for manager trainings, if that's for staff trainings. We have an online system that has some virtual courses that you can take. And so IT was pivotal in creating that for us, and we kind of manage that, but there's opportunities there for us, and we'll continue to use it. There's opportunities for tuition reimbursement, right? We've had a high number of usage this year. We're actually, our budget's spent already at this point. We're not even halfway into the year. So it's a benefit that we like to offer. It's a benefit that we advertise that we offer to staff, for new staff, right? And we're already spent on that budget line. So something to keep in mind and something that we hope to hopefully bulk a little bit in the future. And then employee experience, right? So continue to have, look at ways to do that, to personalized support. I think for us, getting out more into the departments and doing some more just stopping by and visiting departments, right? Giving some of that experience. And we get, when that happens, you get some questions that people don't just stop in or they don't call HR. So I think that'll be a big part for us this coming year to make sure that we're doing more getting out into the field. So that's kind of the enhanced experience. Contract negotiations, so that's a big one that'll be coming up. So we'll start those really the end, so summer next year, right? So contracts expire the end of 26, so they would start the beginning of 27, and so we'll start those negotiations next year, and that'll be a big part of what we do in the summer. So retain qualified staff, so that's the other strategic objective. So continue to work on acquisition and retention, right? So attracting top talent, implementing some strategic retention initiatives, so working through those. Skill-based hiring, so focusing on not necessarily credentials initially, but training and developing staff or folks to get them to be where we want them to be, right? Bringing in folks that may be a little bit greener, and then developing and training them to be a great staff that we could retain and maybe turns out to be a career employee, right? So some of the focus there that we'll do. And then reducing time to hire for critical roles. So something that we've been working on, and I think that there's a huge opportunity for us as well with some roles. Sheriff's Office, there's a detailed background check that takes place, right? That holds up folks. It can take upwards of a month and a half to 2 months. So working on some things that we can do within each of those departments to streamline that a little bit, excuse me. And then central dispatch as well. We're working on some processes there. Internally doing background checks, so not necessarily going to detectives to have to do it within the Sheriff's Office. So good stuff. And then there's opportunity with other departments as well that have some long-term positions that have been posted, like construction codes.
And then continuing on the strategic planning is building trust and transparency by applying policies fairly and equitably between departments and individuals. As Donna has always mentioned to us, that even under like our FMLA policy, that if you do it for one, you have to do it for all. It has to be fair and equitable. Continued development and availability of guides and resources. As Chris has mentioned, we've been still working on those guides for Workday, and as we continue to grow with Workday, we will continue to provide the SOPs and the guides. We still like to provide services to our employees, so if they do call, we will follow up with them. We will walk them through the process, but then we also like to provide them where they can find those resources as needed. Engaging with employee beyond policy enforcement by continuing open availability and committing HR to be out in the field. As Chris had mentioned, we're trying to get out more in the field. The other day, as Sydney being fairly new, we decided to go over to the circuit court to help an employee with one of their vision reimbursements. Not only did they learn how to use the do their vision reimbursement through Workday, but we were there for about an hour or so following up with other questions. By the time we had left, I had, I think, 3 or 4 other areas that I needed to look into to help with our employees. One was looking for dental providers, because with with Delta Dental now, they kind of shifted as our provider, so I was trying to assist in that to provide list of the providers in the area that are participants as well. And then there was some other things that we needed to follow up on. So getting out in the field is very important, that we need to continue to do. The other thing is focusing, the last one would be focusing on the needs of the community by aligning future workforce needs with GTC goals. It's not just to put people into places, into the position, but it is to possibly put the right person into those positions as well, so that way that they can continue to grow. And then also having the right people in those positions is so that they can service the employees that we are here to service. And then also just fostering a sense of community within the workplace. We had a road patrol gentleman came in the other day on his insurance, needed some assistance, and we, between Kaylee and Donna and myself, walked him through the process, got him enrolled into his plans that he needed. He was a little bit behind, but we were able to get him caught up and taken care of, and then just making sure that he had what he needed for his benefits. So that's another thing. Even though we do have the guides that we're trying to use Workday as more of a self-service, with HR being there to service our employees, that's what we're ultimately there. So that's what we were trying to do, is focus and make sure that HR is felt more as a community, that they are welcome to come into our department and get the service that they need. You want to do the last one? Or does Donna want to do the last one?
So conclusion. So the department is a pivotal point for the county, right? And so balancing technological advancements with the need for human-centric strategies. So trying not to read word for word, but essentially it's a big part of what we do, right? It's the workday. It's a lot of advancement there, and it's balancing some of the old processes that we had in place with some of the new stuff on the board before us. And so, yeah, HR is evolving to meet the county's growing and dynamic needs, committed to building a modern, responsive, and people-first workforce with a focus on retention, and grateful for the board's continued partnership and support. So, thank you.
Thank you. It's a great report. Any questions or comments
Right here.
for our beautiful partners? Mr. Flynn?
Mister?
I said commissioner. You can be a mister if you want in this day and age, but I said commissioner.
Sorry, misheard you. Still plugged up over here. I want to first say thank you, because I have been one of those folks coming into the office needing some help getting my insurance all set up, so I appreciate that very much. You mentioned the separation interviews where you get positive and negative feedback. How is that communicated back to the department heads?
When we have an incident that we need to talk to the department head or have conversation, we do have those conversations with them so that they understand. So many of our department heads are aware of some of the issues that have come up in their departments. And some of them, again, you know, with them being elected officials, all we can do is give recommendations and suggestions. But then other ones we do have looked at, and we've followed up with other, I guess, other recommendations and suggestions to help them through the process so that they're made aware of it. And then if it becomes more of an issue, then like Donna gets involved, or she also brings Nate into those discussions as well.
I also want to hope that the positives is shared as well. So
Yeah, but we have had enough negative in a situation in a department that we've actually sat down with Mr. Alger and the manager to say, okay, what can we do to correct these issues and concerns that we have in this area?
And we also let them know to fill them out that it's held confidentially. So that way they don't feel that we're just going to give it to their supervisors, or their supervisor is going to know instantly what someone says
Right.
or how it's been said. The other thing is we try to keep it more of a cumulative, so that way we can say, okay, out of the last maybe 4 or 5 exit interviews, we've had maybe some negative comments in this area. So that way it doesn't necessarily just separate their comments out. Yeah.
Right. Thank you.
Mr. Walter?
Turnover ratio last year was 19%, and so far this year 9.5%, although I'm assuming it's probably similar to last year. And is that normal? Do you feel good about it? Like, I don't know. That number doesn't mean anything to me outside of a context of, you know, how you're feeling about it, and
I would say
you
funny
look
that you
more
asked-
long-term.
yes. Funny that you asked that question. So we actually, when we were working on the presentation, we kind of Googled it to see what the percentage was for county. What are they saying is average? We are definitely above average, in not a good way. But yeah, so based on other municipalities, we are on the high end.
And then just a follow-up question, I know, and it's been good to see some people have grown professionally and moved into other departments, or, found other professional development opportunities within the county. How is that reflected in this data?
So that would not be reflected if we're moving them from one department. We're not considering that as turnover.
Okay.
Turnover is actually somebody who's actually left the building.
Okay,
Where we actually have to shut their accounts off.
Yeah.
okay, good.
So I appreciate Commissioner Walters' question. I had the same question, how, and then I guess the follow-up, if we're above average in the negative way, so to speak, that, I hear we spend a lot of resources onboarding, we spend a fair amount of resources exit interviewing, and in the middle, we've got current employees who we want to keep. We want retention, and obviously one thing we do is benefits and pay and support services. What is the annual review process, and how does HR support department heads in doing best practices directly with their internal hires, with their staff?
So currently, Human Resources and Grand Traverse County doesn't do a formal review process, is what I would be familiar with. We did have somebody that was very adamant about them, and they recently attended a meeting and said, oh, yeah, these really aren't beneficial. Coming from the private industry, we did them all the time. We did them at 6 months and 12 months, and I can tell you they are absolutely useless. I wish I could say that they're the greatest thing since canned beer, but they're not. They take a lot of time, and they basically, what I always felt like in the private industry, it was like, okay, great, I want to get through my review, now tell me how much I'm going to make, because it was always something joined hand in hand. We do sit down with the managers, and if they're having issues with an employee, we are always there to try to help them coach and counsel that employee. I always say this, if it's not written down, it didn't happen, so I'm always encouraging them to make sure that they have some kind of documentation on those employees. Again, it's hand in hand. I wish we could spend even more time doing that, is helping train those employees in skills that they want to learn. I do see that there's a definite need for it out there based on tuition reimbursement. We have just seen a huge spike in it this year and last year, so more employees are taking advantage of that continuing education, which is a good thing. I don't want to say that's a bad thing, because it's a great thing, because they are now, if they take advantage of our tuition reimbursement, they have to stay a year after they're finished, because they would have to either write us a check back for it, or they have to stay and work another year so that they pay back that tuition that they're using. I hope that answered your question.
Any other questions?
So just to confirm, I work for a company, and every year within our departments, we come up with goals and then metrics, and then we have an annual review based on those goals and metrics that we set, and then we talk through it, and I find it really helpful. So nothing like that exists at the county? There's no
There's no formal performance evaluation like a metrics or a tool to sit down and do that. I have done them in the past, but there's no formal process. Again, I want to say it depends up to the manager. When I sit down with the HR team, I'm always saying, okay, what are we going to work on? What's our next goal? We have meetings now every Tuesday, and that's where we're always trying to advance. We are embracing every bit of workday that we possibly can. Anything that we can put in the system and make it more robust to use, so that it's a tool that we're very happy to have, because when the AS400 was, I think, almost as old as me. So based on the fact that we have this wonderful system now, we're using the heck out of it. So again, as a manager, I feel like that's the manager's responsibility to make sure that they're spending time with their employee and making sure that they're trained. And I'm going to say Chris and Leanne do a great job of spending time with both Leanne and Kaylee and making sure that they're learning everything that they possibly can. So it's not, I don't want to say in the human resource department, it's all of us together because we can learn from each other. Kaylee, who is like the super whiz on Workday, I don't know, I mean, she's literally, I'm like, wait, slow down, show me that. So they're even teaching me things. So it's not that I'm always trying to show them something, like as I call a teaching moment, but they are also teaching me.
Anyone else?
Yeah, back to the turnover ratio, does Workday allow you to identify which departments are experiencing a higher ratio relative to other departments, so that we can evaluate if there's systemic issues there and how we can improve them?
Yes.
And is that happening?
Yes.
And where's that happening?
I wouldn't want to publicly put those departments out there where we have the highest turnovers, but again, it's the departments that we're experiencing the biggest turnover are the same departments that we've always experienced the highest turnover in.
Well, I won't ask you for tell tales.
Because I would be
That
very mad
protect
if
our
someone said-
Public
employees.
information,
Yeah.
isn't it?
I can send it, I mean,
I'm
if you
sorry, I
guys
have
wanted
the
to.
floor.
Uh-huh.
Commissioners, thank you. So, we have talked about the salary committee that we had an ad hoc last year, bringing it back, so we will ask you for some advice, if you will, in strategic planning, how we can alleviate some of these issues, because it's concerning that we're 5 months into the year and we're halfway there or better.
And the thing is when we printed those slides, since this time, I think there's been 5 more people that have resigned.
Was that a voluntary, an involuntary, or a retirement?
All combination, yes.
I have a quick question for clarity. So when we say involuntary, it's like they were fired, not they resigned in lieu of being terminated.
Correct.
Okay. Anyone else? Thank you so much for your
Thank you.
presentation.
You guys have a great day.
I would like to just add, we have something called workforce planning in Workday, and it has the information that you're asking for. We can bring that to the board in a future meeting, just so Donna has the opportunity to go through that. It shows who's left, for what reason, and which department.
Thank you. Mr. Bott? Thank you.
Got it.
How do you advance?
This right here.
Oh.
Upper or lower?
Thank
So
you.
go forward, let's go backward.
Good morning, Commissioners. It's hard to follow admin and HR. And Cliff, I'm sorry, you have to be behind me.
You got this.
And I did not get the right color scheme, I see.
There's-
But we
there's
do have-
color. There's color, though.
We do have, yes, that's really good for my department, so.
I'm gonna
pretty-
start the wave in the middle.
We're
of it.
pretty black and white.
The jokes were a nice touch.
Well, yeah, I would like to go right to that and talk
Me too.
about those, but.
I mean,
So we do have a mission statement. I'm not going to read it word for word, but we basically are responsible for making sure that all of the accounting and financial transactions are properly recorded. We want our debits to equal our credits. We want to bring in more revenue than we expend, and we want to have positive fund balances in all of our funds. I have, the department consists of 5 individuals. I was once going to go through and add up the number of years, but it's just a number. Myself, Cheryl Wolf, Jackie Jameson, Logan Wilson, and Luke Lidgard. We have a pretty good team, maybe not quite as good as HR because we're a little fewer in numbers, but the good thing about the office is we all work in the same place. It's pretty much an open door policy. If I need to talk to any of these individuals, I get up and I go talk to them. And for the most part, the administrator, Mr. Elger, told me, though, that people are scared of me. I don't know why. So I really don't get a lot of visitors. So I need to work on my...
we should move you to Lafreniere. Maybe you'll get more visitors.
I need to be a nicer person, I think. I will not go through this list either, but these are pretty much the things that we do on a regular basis. We pay the bills. We work very closely with human resources and the treasurer's office on processing the payroll. We invoice for revenues that are due the county. For example, the community policing officers that we have. And I do have to apologize. I've been fighting some allergies, so my throat is really, really dry. And I probably
Right there with ya.
I probably sound a little funny. At least to myself, I sound funny today. But and it was mentioned, we do work. We have the auditors in right now. I hate to say it, but they can be very challenging. And especially when we have the same auditor that we've had for a number of years, but the partner that we worked with that's supervised the audit, he retired right after we finished the 2023 audit. So we're working with a different partner in the same firm. And needless to say, I think I won't mention his name. We've had some differences of opinion. We butted heads on a few things, politely, mildly. But all of these things that are listed, we pretty much do on a regular basis. So when the auditors are in, we're still paying bills. We're still processing payroll. Payroll is something that's done every other week. We have a biweekly payroll. Luke works very closely with Kaylee. Thank you for working with us. And that's also the benefit of us all being on the same floor. If I need to speak with Donna, I can just walk down and drop in on her. I never tell her I'm coming. I just show up. If I need to talk to Cliff, usually they let me in to talk to Cliff, which is, but they tell me my key works now, so sometimes I just use my key and come in and surprise them. So I did want to give you just a quick example of what a year in our department looks like. It's pretty much the same cycle repeated over and over again. But no 2 days are the same. It's always interesting to come in to work, because I always have a plan. But I never get to do what I plan on doing because something changes or something comes up. But usually the first couple of months, January to February, we're closing the prior fiscal year. We are a calendar year, fiscal year, so thank goodness that hasn't changed. We've talked about changing our fiscal year a couple of times in the 34 years that I've been here, but we have not done that. So once we get the year closed, the auditors are chomping at the bit to come in and audit the books. We do that basically from March to June. We have to file our audit report with the state of Michigan, the Michigan Department of Treasury, by June 30th. And unfortunately, it usually comes down to the last couple of weeks in June. We have a very, the county's involved in a lot of things. And our audit report, our financial statements, it's called an annual comprehensive financial report. It's about 200 pages. And when you look at the federal revenues that we receive and the related, all of the funds, the brownfield activities, and all of the notes that have to go in to the financial statements, in the supplementary schedules and the budget information, you go from a 100-page document to a 200-page document real quick. And then as we're working on the audit, we're also starting at this time of year the budget for the subsequent fiscal year. I put on here from July to October, but the budget process starts for most of us in May, and we hope to have that a recommended budget to you by October. And then we're in November, and we start the process of closing the current year, working on setting up, work very closely with HR and Sarah to make sure that we have our personnel numbers right, not only in the budget, but for when we process that first payroll in the subsequent fiscal year. And again, all of these things that we're doing on a fairly regular basis are done while we're paying all of our bills. We process anywhere from 400 to 500 invoices a week. They're always coming at us. That includes juror payments, restitution payments from one of Bonnie's offices. Yeah, there's never a shortage of invoices or bills to pay. So the basic accounting equation, we want to make sure that our assets equal our liabilities and equity. We do follow, it's basically just general purpose accounting. It's fund accounting, which is a little bit different than what the private sector does. And a lot of what we do is established by state law, state statutes regarding not only the budgeting that we do, but the financial statements that are prepared. We work very closely with the Michigan Department of Treasury. They established that the funds that we use, the Uniform Chart of Accounts, they recently, just as we were implementing Workday, they changed the chart of accounts. So in the process of implementing the Workday ERP, we aligned all of our accounting records and our accounts to be compliant with that new state chart of accounts manual. And then we've mentioned or talked about our audit report that is required by state law to be done every year based on our size county. It's like a report card. You know, it tells us, are we in compliance with the budget that the board has adopted, because budget variances are reported in that document. And again, that audit report, you have to follow what the state tells you it needs to include, but also what general purpose accounting standards and principles. We follow what's known as the GASB, the Governmental Accounting Standards Board. They adopt all kinds of principles that we need to make sure that we implement. Back in the early days, we were basically straight up fund accounting. But then they wanted to make sure that we were more like the public sector, and they went to what's known as full accrual accounting. And what that has resulted in is we now have to put our pension liability on the face of our county-wide, government-wide financial statements. Our retiree health liability is on those financial statements, so that's all rolled into that audit report. I am very proud of the fact, the last item on the slide, is that we have, it's work, it's never easy, but we do submit our annual financial report to the GFOA, the Government Finance Officers Association, for their Certificate of Achievement program. With the 2023 audit, we did receive the award, the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting, and that was the 19th consecutive award. We are currently working on the 2024 audit, and we will submit that as well, and if we're able to receive that award, that would be our 20th consecutive year. That's the goal. So I did mention the Budget Act. We not only do the budget for financial management reasons, but it's required by state law. You can't process a payroll or purchase a paperclip when you begin your fiscal year without having a budget that's been approved by you folks. And that the budget, it's designed to make sure that it's your spending plan, but you need to make sure that you have the revenue to support my department, HR, administration, what the Board of Commissioners does, and everything that all of the departments do. We put budgets together for almost all of our funds, even though they're not required to be prepared for example, a drain fund or even the IT fund, but we do still prepare a budget for those funds, even though the current practices and state law doesn't require it, just for financial management purposes. And then regarding state statutes, there's always something that changes. There's something new that comes along. Some of the biggest items have been in 2017. There was the requirement, because it's a significant liability and a commitment, our pension liabilities and our retiree health benefits that we offer. The state has implemented some statutes that require us to report that liability and the progress that we're making on funding that liability over time. That was Public Act 202 of 2017. And then the last point is that external, the Governmental Accounting Standards Board. The couple of the big ones regarding the pension and retiree health, I've just listed a few of the numbers. They just issued Standard 102. So they're a very active standard-setting body, and for the most part, we have to comply with all of those accounting standards. If we don't, then your financial report, it may pass the state of Michigan test, but it would not be eligible for the award. I'll speed it up. I see you're looking at but this was my favorite slide. So,
This was a good one.
accountants, we're not very flashy. We don't have, I don't know, I'm not going to be too hard on myself, but I didn't realize these things. Jackie in the office found all of these. And the one that really I might need to explain, does anybody understand the one down at the bottom right-hand corner?
Bottom right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, because an accounting term or principle, we do a lot of accrual accounting or accrued wages, accrued benefits. I did not know that. You learn something new every day. Did not make that up.
Accountants live in a cruel world.
Do you want a rim shot on the drum?
You left the room, and I told them that you said that people are afraid of me. It must be
Yeah.
because I'm an accountant, right?
Sure. I'll send
Anyway.
a survey.
You don't look like Mick Jagger.
No, I don't sing like him either, especially not today.
Can you dance
Any
like him?
questions?
Any questions, everybody? Please.
Please, I
Just-
hope you have some.
Just a comment, if there were a certificate of achievement for excellence in providing metrics to this board, I would give it to you for your annual report. It's the most comprehensive, useful resource that I believe is published out of the county. It's an immense resource, and I look forward to it every year when the new one comes out. So I want to just thank you
Oh,
for
thank you.
sharing, and congratulate you for getting that award from the
Commissioner Andrews, are you looking at the statistical section or just the entire report?
I find it all useful. I like the section at the back where you provide a 10-year look back on a variety of metrics. I appreciate that's a ton of work. And
It
I
is,
think
but-
it's incredibly useful data. And I know I'm not the only commissioner who loves data and data mining, so I just want to commend you and appreciate that the Government Finance Officers Association recognizes your good work, too.
Thank you.
Said, I concur. Anybody else? Questions, comments, concerns?
Thank you, Dean.
Thank you, Mr. Bott. Crew. My God, it's going to haunt me. I like the accrual world, though. That's pretty funny.
Live in a cruel world.
Whenever you folks are ready, we're ready.
Oh, great.
Apologize. Thank you for being patient.
Absolutely. Hi, Cliff Dupuy, IT. With me today, I have Lynn Church, and Lynn is responsible for everything as far as ordering goes and budgeting and reviews for new equipment and things like that. And then Shelby Greenland, who is our telephony expert, so he would be responsible for cell phones and landline phones. We took a little different approach than what the other departments do. Mostly because the number one aspect that's going to impact IT this coming year is obviously the city divestiture. So if you look at the city divestiture, we're talking about a $377,000 hit to the budget, a loss. We've also had 3 staff transitions, departures, so that would be telephony, that was Randy, that was a retirement, AS400. As we transition away from the 400, we have one court that's still on the 400 that should be wrapping up in Q3 of this year, where they're moving to the state JIS system. And then we had a technician opening that we backfilled with, we'll talk in just a second. Transitions, obviously we went, when we had a retirement, we voluntold Shelby into the telephony position. And so he's now handling that. So he's responsible for all cell phones, landlines, and he's going to talk about his budget in just a minute. And we do have a technician that starts next Monday as a backfill for Shelby's position. And so if you look at the transition, the difference, the residual difference between the two, 206,000 hit to the budget, and then actually we're recovering some of that. So our adjusted lost revenue projected for the year is about $285,000. If you look at the difference in the staffing and what we're replacing and what we're not replacing.
Cliff, can I ask you a question now or later?
Yeah, please, as
This
we
is
go
just
along.
related to the city divestiture. Because we talked a little bit or started to ponder it, that we had a lot of like combined contracts, right? It was sort of the economy of scale of having all of that. And some of those will continue and we'll just eat the cost. Or can you talk through, you know, that revenue loss line, what all is included? And is that mostly the contracts? Is that, you know, the city paying us for things? Is that a combination? Like, are the, you know, long-term, is this you know, said it's a one-time hit, but can you speak to that a little bit more?
Absolutely. We bill for services. So we bill for services based on the computer, if they use OnBase, the applications that they use, things like that. There's a menu, a menu that we have based on the services each one uses. That lost revenue, primarily, I'm going to say 95% of that, it comes from we're not billing those departments for those equipment anymore. If you look at, I talked about our last meeting, if you look at the past 3.5 years, we've had a formalized ITSM, Information Technology System Management software. We only did about 14% of the total tickets out of, I think it was 72,000 or something like 7,000, I don't remember what the number was. 14% of that actually was city. So the county, the 600 employees for the county and the infrastructure that goes to support that primarily is what's consumed as far as an IT department concerned. As far as departments go, contracts, the biggest one we have is NetMotion. NetMotion is an application that when a police officer, public service leaves a building that has Wi-Fi, they go out into the car, now they're in broadband, it does that transition, makes it a nice transition, seamless for them, because they can't take the time to, you know, do Control-Alt-Delete to get something to work. And so that is a very minimal cost to that transition. It's maybe $15,000, $20,000 total. We're going to continue that license through August, and then the city is going to pick that up. That is the only contract that was impacted.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. Evergreen purchases. I'm going to let Lynn talk about Evergreen strategy. What we did 5 years ago when I first started here is we went to an Evergreen strategy. So what that means is every 4 years someone gets a new computer. The challenge when you come to an organization is I get calls, we get calls, hey, our computer's 10 years old, I need a new one. You go and you put in the serial number and it's 2 years old. So what we did is we went to a formalized Evergreen strategy so everyone gets a new computer every 4 years. And if you look at the computers, like where Mr. Alger's sitting, you see the color-coded tab. Every color represents a year. So like this year, I think it's blue. If you have a blue tab, you're getting a new computer. And so Lynn, if you want to talk about that.
Yeah, so what I did, I work with each of the departments and we go through every computer, which is usually assigned to an employee, and we are on this. So what happens is Dell covers the computer for 3 years. So if anything goes wrong, we can send it back to Dell. It's paid for, it's taken care of. That 4th year, we lose that coverage, and that's when our techs take it over. After that point, if the computer is no longer operable, we insist that they purchase a new one. We have found this works really, really well. Each department will get a color-coded PDF of their inventory, and so they can project their computer replacements right now through 2029. In putting in the budget this year, I asked for $300,000, kind of keep it in line with our 2024 budget that we had. I think we won't use that. I also have asked some of the departments who have not purchased this year's equipment to not carry it over to next year, so that we could save approximately about $68,000 to $70,000, which will help a little bit of our shortfall. And we do have some other equipment that we can talk about in a bit, but that's basically how it works. It's working out great. I don't know, anything else with that?
Questions on Evergreen?
Question?
I would just, Cliff, can you add to that conversation a little bit about the way these computers are received by the county, by user?
Oh, they what? I'm
They're
sorry.
preloaded?
Oh, yeah, so thanks to the support of this board, we have a very comprehensive infrastructure through Microsoft's Azure, and so what we do is we have from the factory, the computers are built with an application called Autopilot. Autopilot actually has our information in it. It comes from the factory factory floor. It has all the information about Grand Traverse County. We take that, we plug it in. Autopilot automatically says, hey, this belongs to Grand Traverse County. Put in the email address of the user that's going to, and all the software gets loaded. So what that did is it reduced our labor costs as far as taking the computer, taking it out, blowing away the factory image, and then putting our image on. So it comes with our image on there, and then because we're doing so much communication with the cloud says, oh, this belongs to Grand Traverse County, it belongs to Cliff, this is the applications that he gets, and that's how we get those rollouts. That's how we do that. There are times we miss things. The biggest thing is printer drivers always change. Those are some new changes that are coming to now with Windows 11. But those are the big things. The big bulk of it, the labor-intensive part, is all done at the factory. Comes from. Budget breakdown. This is Lynn's specialty. I'll let her go with this one.
Oh, I should wear my other glasses. All right, so basically you'll see it's just broken down by all the vendors that we have to pay maintenance fees to. Two of our biggest, obviously, are our Microsoft products. That's our 365 and our cloud versions. That price may or may not change within probably 2%. I don't know. We don't know. That's the problem about being in this industry. You know, these software companies sort of just have us by their pinky, and prices will go up. But that's about estimating what should be next year. The other thing on the very bottom, you'll see I have it's SHI upgrade. That's with Scott Kurtzel. Wi-Fi upgrade, which will be with Chris Roberts, and then UbiCo. These are our wish lists. The first one, the 1.3 million, that's on the high side. We have equipment that's going to need to be replaced. It's terming out. It's 8 years old. And to do this projected project will be somewhere between 1.1, 1.3 million. We don't know yet because we can't get a quote yet. Then with the Wi-Fi upgrade, again, on the high side, 135. We don't know, we can't get a quote yet, but I'd rather put the number out there and then pull back if we need it. And then finally, the last one is UbiCo, which is another security option that we have for our sign-ons. This would cover the whole county, and you would get these little keys, and that's how you can access your computer. So basically, that's it. We do have the revenue that comes in. You can see on the bottom I wrote Adobe, Bluebeam, IT billing, non-IT billing, equipment for resale. So these, for instance, if a department needs Adobe Pro, it is now subscription. We purchase it, we bill them back. That's that first line, right? And this may grow as well because Adobe now, in order to have Adobe, it has to be a subscription. They don't sell 1-year licenses or 5-year licenses or whatever. It's a subscription service now. So that likely will grow a little bit. Bluebeam is construction code. We get them back. IT billing, this is where we get our revenue from by what we charge each department throughout the year. Non-county IT billing, this may be impacted a little bit because we do have Atrium County in there. And again, this is for access to our servers, our networks, all our software programs, for the courts that use OnBase, This comes back to us. And then equipment for resale, right now, we're getting back about $240,000, which, like I said before, if I get the rest of the departments that haven't purchased their equipment yet this year, that should balance out pretty well. Finally, what else can I tell you? There are other little things, those supplies, the MIS fees, those are just running our department. Those prices pretty much will stay close to what it is. But again, I can't say enough that with these maintenance fees, they could rise another 2 to another 5%. Don't know. We won't know. It's just too early. But I can project at least 2 to 5%. Any questions? Yes.
Good question about the equipment resale. I'm assuming, when the computer is not, somewhat obsolete, but it's then resold back to the manufacturer, or can
No, I'm sorry.
employees
Let me
buy
explain
it?
that. I call that equipment, it's a line item we call equipment for resale. So if, for instance, HR, like Kaylee, needs a new computer next year, I will purchase her a computer through Dell, and then I bill back. So that, in that bill back, that's the equipment for resale.
Okay.
Out of my budget, that's what it is. When the computers are done, we do not sell them anywhere. I think it's against the law. I'm not sure. It's in our government rules. We cannot just donate them. So we recycle them, and we destroy the hard drives. And we employ a company to come in and do that.
TJ? Any other questions?
I think they're not done.
Oh, sorry.
That's it?
Oh, there's
That was
more
it.
slides
Okay.
going, right?
Oh, it's a summary.
Yep, that was just summary.
Telephony.
Yeah, the last three, then the purple that you see there, that's going to be our wish list coming up for the next budget year. And the YubiKey that she talked about is that this is what a YubiKey is. It's an actual physical device. And so when you talk about security of an infrastructure, what you know and what you own. So what you know is your password, and what you own is this device, and this is what this device. So that's what a YubiKey is. So if you look at, there's some numbers, just some offset. If you look at the assets and liabilities and doing a ballpark, it's about a loss of $64,000, $65,000 that IT is going to realize. Again, if the information that Lynn provided you as far as the getting departments to purchase this year, it might be a wash, but that number also includes the three items that we had on the wish list. So the one, infrastructure-wise, the 1.3, that is for new server farm. Ours is 8 years old. In a grand scheme of things, depreciation on hardware that gets used like that is about a 5 to 8 years old, so we've done that. The Wi-Fi upgrade, right now we're in Wi-Fi 5.0. 6 is out there, and 7 is coming, so that's just faster speeds. And then on the YubiKey is for more security. And telephony, I'll let Shelby talk about this.
As with the IT budget, the telephony budget is also being impacted by the city divestiture. Kind of like Lynn spoke, we get most of our revenue from billing the departments for their usage. We're losing approximately 100 lines when the city finally splits off of our phone system, which we will need to bill back to the departments, as a lot of the costs for our telephone system are fixed. We did have some savings for the next budget, as we saw a reduction in labor costs with Randy leaving, which does offset some of the loss of the city, which is covered on here. Because I believe we're going from about 520 lines to approximately 436. Any questions?
And that's us.
What was the, I have a question, but I'll wait. Commissioner Nelson?
So I got confused in the details. What's the bottom line for the city divestiture with taking into account our costs and our decreased cost, increased revenue, whatever? Just give me the bottom net line.
$65,000 loss.
Okay, so that is the one, all right. Thank you.
And it could be more. Maintenance costs average anywhere between, like Lynn said, 2 to 5% on an annual upgrade.
And we have not yet completed that process. We are close. We've just talked to the city manager late last week about a potential need to extend that divestiture potentially into mid-June, late June, due to just the complicating factors surrounding the law enforcement center and the connectivity we have with them. So I think just we're taking it crawling, walking, running with that, and at some point in time, we should have a firm understanding of where we're at.
Yeah, we will have residual income revenue from that because of the delay from the city, so will be additional revenue that we'll be able to bill for. So there'll be some residual revenue for that.
Okay.
Thank you.
I have a quick question. What was under your executive summary, the total liabilities is 3.3 million, whatever. That's essentially the cost to the taxpayers. What was it last year?
Oh.
I didn't see that in here. That's right. You can email it to me later
Okay.
on, Cliff. I appreciate that.
Yep, I
I
apologize.
don't think it's that far different.
I don't
I'll get
think
you
it.
an exact number. Yes,
Thank
sir.
you very much.
Absolutely.
Any other questions? Fantastic. Thank you, everyone.
Yep.
All right. I think it's Mr. Bird's turn.
Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. Greg Bird, Emergency Management Director, Coordinator, whatever it is today. Let me get this going. So this
Did
is...
you say danger coordinator? I'm just checking.
Yes, call me anything but late for dinner today, I suppose. What did I say? I said Emergency Management Coordinator. Sorry, I'm already on to the next meeting that we're supposed to be at, so I apologize for that. That was that phone call was, where are we meeting at today? This, just to go back and refresh everybody's memory, this was a question by the board, I believe, that started last summer sometime. It proceeded that, where I remember in the fall, I think in November meeting, that there was a task issued that IT Director Dupuy graciously volunteered him and myself to kind of champion, looking into a comprehensive, what was titled as a security camera system for the county. We added Deputy Administrator Chris Forsyth, and then, I don't know why the committee's just showing as me. One moment.
Click on it. There's,
Yeah.
Oh.
I see something different.
That's weird. There we go. But then after Mr. Forsyth, Mr. Dupuy, and I initially started and did some background check, we added the following committee members. And they were members of departments that had considerable vested interest and uses in not only a security camera system. The jail has some capital improvement funds this year budgeted for specifically surveillance cameras added. Their needs are different than the rest of the county. And then, of course, facilities. Mr. Chase was kind of always an advisor to the initial small group, and his deputy, Chris Como, as we ventured into, and as you'll see in the presentation, found that the best bang for what we want to invest potentially could be a comprehensive system that involves everything from door entry to ID cards that are all one to a camera system. And so that's where the committee stands today, and this larger committee tediously went through some of the initial ballpark proposals and talked to all references. So here's kind of the timeline, a recap and a scenario. Back in the latter part of last year when this started, Mr. Dupuy and Mr. Forsyth and I, we decided there are successful community partners. I knew of TCAPS because in a matter of school safety, I have access to TCAPS security cameras within the Emergency Operations Center. I find it very user-friendly, it's very intuitive. Additionally, all of our community and county law enforcement officers, every single one of them have door cards to every single TCAP school. It involves ID. And in working and listening through our school safety security collaborative, their process to get that ID for every officer, and when one transfers out, it was seamless. Not knocking any of the processes we do here, but so efficient. It's almost like they have that card for TCAPS for their entry for every officer before we hire a new employee has our credentials and cards. So there was an attraction to going to them and saying, what are you doing? Everything from the camera system, their security cards. So, and the same thing with NMC, a user of their system, work with them. We just got finished again for I don't know how many years in a row working with them for where we stage our unified command post. NMC graciously gives us access to all their security systems as well as IT infrastructure for dispatch to run and such. So that was our first kind of bell ringing scenario of, here's two large community partners that have fairly intuitive, easy maintain, manage their own, do their own thing. It's the same company. So that kind of brought some things. So we initially then brought in this company, People Driven Technologies. Their home office is down in Grand Rapids. They have a huge presence up here. They've also did some work over the years for the Munson Medical Healthcare System, their entire system, as well as some initial work and maybe some continuing kind of roundabout work for Cherry Capital Airport. So lots of community partners right within Traverse City. So we met with them. Then we briefed Nate in February, Administrator Alger, and then Nate's suggestion was, we think this is something worth talking about, something we're pursuing. Let's form the larger committee. Let's dig into this. Let's see more. So that's where you see that timeline. And then earlier this month, we had a special meeting. We invited all these references and our community partners to either appear physically or teams, and the specialized groups that have individual needs, but also huge, heavy needs on security system, as well as door entry systems, ask questions to all the references. So we'll get into that in a little bit later. So here's what we found through the process so far. The meetings with community partners showed a common vendor. Additionally, I'll go one step further, is when we dug into the references and we talked to references, and I actually knew a few more that they didn't list as a reference in their initial overarching proposal to us, was every single one of them started where we are. They either needed a solution or they had kind of, I'm going to call it a patchwork solution, which is what we have now. We have different departments that have ownership. It's physical equipment. The cameras are antiquated. No one person in the county or department is responsible for those. The door entry system is from a common company where we're just having some work, and we have some antiquated equipment, and we had all different accounts, and that contract's up for renewal. And so that their issues that drove them commonly to People-Driven Technologies were the same as our issues and struggles currently. So that was kind of a check mark that we didn't even know we were digging into, that commonality with them. We identified this vendor as kind of, I'm going to refer to as a unicorn, because the more I dug into it, and the more Deputy Administrator Forsythe dug into it, we couldn't really find another company that does what they actually do for their customer. We can go to any number of companies out there that will put in cameras. You have to tell them what you want. You have to pay for design. It ranges in expertise and equipment value. It ranges from them owning it to them monitoring it to us. It's all over the ballpark. But as far as the comprehensive representative, I'm going to liken People-Driven Technologies to what you become familiar what Cunningham Limp is doing for us. They're the owner's rep. They're kind of brokering as their specialty, but they're representing our interests. And that's what People-Driven Technologies seems to do for their customers. You pay one vendor or one client, which is them. They represent you. Then as they title down and whittle into, we're going to put cameras and door system in this building, they'll go and use our purchasing and bid policies, and that's where they'll bid out through their vendors, which they're so large, their vendors give them better pricing than my deal or federal GSA contracts, and they guarantee that. So that was the all, what I'll say is finding the unicorn. They had a better approach as they're with us every step of the way, including any changes in priorities, which we'll talk about in a minute. The county drives the implementation schedule. And I'm going to reference what I know everybody paid attention to. I saw it in the media this morning, the 3-year plan. Yes, there's dollar amounts there. That was back then when Deputy Administrator and Mr. Dupuy and I sat, that was a all-encompassing, here's the entire system, here's every facility and parks that we own. Here's places that we have system already. Here's places that we don't have systems already. Give us this grand scheme of things that we don't have to do any of it, or pick out portions, or go all at once, or do in phases. And so this was the example they posted for us, and we'll deal more into that detail too. But if we enter a contract with People Driven Technologies, they'll work and do the work we want them to do on our schedule with our budget funds, how we direct them to do it. They will do a comprehensive countywide approach, and even if we fracture it, even if we don't do certain facilities right now, they will continue with the implementation team to work with them as well as the Board of Commissioners as priority changes. And since this document was published, we know there's already been priorities changed. We didn't have a jail implementation committee back then. We didn't have permission to go to detailed design for Project Alpha, the ECC EOC building. So we know that there's changes already that have occurred, and we know that as priorities continue to change. And one of the things they're used to doing is, this is sort of like an overarching guideline. And even with, if we choose to pay one lump sum fee and enter those phases, as priorities and things change, or as things don't take as long to implement or construct as others, they'll weave things in and out based upon what makes sense to us with their guidance. And then the county ownership, they come in and they build a system and they hand it over. So that's working with, if it's IT that's going to be responsible for maintaining the system, it's ours. We own it. The legacy cost is the maintenance and the firmware and the upgrades to that. It's not reliant on third-party contractors and vendors unless that's what we want. They're flexible with that. But the system that we all heard was a cloud-based system that we could envision when we started a new employee. By the time Human Resources onboarded them, they would get their ID, their Prox card. If they were in a department and they had access to cameras, they would get that training. All of that would be maintained in-house through us, which we can't put a dollar figure on what return on investment or what potential savings that we have. But we do know that we have multiple contracts that are probably in the $100,000 or more range a year that we pay to third-party vendors to do all this for us. Plus, our county IDs are different than our door entry cards, and we don't even know all of the nooks and crannies of the current different camera systems that exist for what exists. So that they would turn it over to us. It would be our system ownership and control. And then their subject matter expert vendor, the good chance of return on investment there is digging into our expertise. It's our choose your own adventure of what we want to do. We couldn't find another company that did that. And when we talked to some of the references, one of them, it's like TCAPS. They own it. They have 2 guys off their IT department. They do everything. They do camera swap outs. They do programming. They do authorizations. They do ID cards. They do everything. NMC, they maintain the system. They optimize the system. They make sure it has seamless network connectivity. But when they need cameras replaced, they work with People Driven Technologies and they bid that out and they have somebody swap the cameras out. So it's based upon what is best for us at the time. So that was our discovery points to where we are. This I'm not going to read. It was in your packets. It's basically taken from that document. This is all the background on People Driven Technologies. The last bullet point, I don't want to make this about money and funding, but it is about money and funding. That was another thing with them. Any other company we bid from, if this is just a camera system, if it's a camera entry system, there is going to be a design fee. That's the first step for us to get any idea. They don't charge that. They do that. They offer that. They did not give us everything in the sample, and they used a generalized. They've already started with some of our buildings to do a comprehensive design fee of, okay, the health department building. You need to see if there's a threat coming at the front. You need to see if anybody gained access to an access control point after business hours. You need to see if anybody's doing illegal activities in the back parking lot. Here's the cameras we recommend. Here's, you know, a dual head or bi-head. This is it, and here's the door entry system. This is how, this is why, and the schematics come to us for approval, for discussion, for rejection, etc. So that's what they do without charge. So their project proposal to us, again, this is not exact. This has changed already. However, dependent upon guidance from all of you, this is one of the things we need to go. Is this something that worth explore? Is this something to whittle down? Is this something we want to even phase in longer than 3 years? Is this something we just want to go at? And I know there's no decisions today, but we're asking for your advice based upon what we're seeing here. But I want to take you to, it's going to be page 11 in your package. It's the page titled The 3-Year Plan, Milestones. And as you can see there, it's a total estimated $2.1 million project. And when I say that total, I want to be sure to say that this is more comprehensive project than what you initially asked us to handle or to look at. And the reason we brought you more was we felt this was the most fiscally responsible solution for the county for today, for tomorrow, and for 30 to 50 years down the road. Because it brings complete and total ownership of not only a security camera system for where the county needs security, but a surveillance camera system for the jail to where they need an updated surveillance system. But then it also brings and solves the problem of we have an ID, we have a door entry system, and this door doesn't work right, and this one sticks open, and why do you have access to this, and what? To combine that into, do we want fobs? Do we want an ID that's your door card system? And we control that. I can tell you right now, if there's a threat at this building or at the health department building, and we need to lock the front doors, we have to call a third-party vendor in Grand Rapids. We have to enter an access code that's 5 to 7 digits. We have to work through a memory tree, and then we have to ask for a door locking adjustment. They have to acknowledge that, and then we have to wait for the doors to lock. It's not safe for our employees. This, we can embed panic buttons in the door cards. We can embed it's so much as a keystroke from somebody who's managing the system here. Or it's a swipe of a special card that locks all the doors instantly. So that's sort of the technology differences here. A lot of it is foundational conversion. You'd see in phase 1, that would be a lot of it. And then we picked some of the public safety plus employee concerns. When you assigned this project, the first floor of this building, as well as the entry to the health department building, that public access, those were priorities to you for cameras and ways to further make our employees that are dealing with large sections of the public safer. And the jail was on there, and that was listed in phase 1 because we knew that they already had some money budgeted in this year's budget. They needed some upgrades and changes there. And then as they moved on, we gave them phase 2, again, going upon that public safety component. We basically took the priorities of the county, plus if you remember the critical infrastructure report I gave you, and based upon life safety and then property protection. And that's how we went upon the priorities. And then you'll see as phase 3 enters, we included some of our parks. I envision some of our parks as we're doing business out there, there may want to have security camera systems or entries to some buildings. And as long as we can get network to it, we know from talking to this company, if we can get network, we can get video cameras and we can get an entry system. So, but if you want us to proceed forward, this is all going to be retooled. None of this happens without budgeting. None of this happens without approval of the board for retooling, repricing, etc. This was everything at the time that we own as a county, if that makes sense. I want to emphasize that. So.
Any questions? Is that you good, Greg? That was good. That was a good presentation. I like that. Mr. Henschel.
I just got some comments. I'm just looking at a list of employers in Grand Traverse County with more than 400 employees. and Grand Traverse County being one of them. But I think about the security measures at these institutions. If I go to Munson Medical Center, if I go to TCAPS, if I go to Northwestern Michigan College, if I go to Interlochen Center for the Arts, and I think about the security measures I see at these employers versus what I see here, and my first instinct is that we are far, far behind the curve as far as providing that basic security that these systems would provide. And I look at the price tag of $2 to $3 million roughly. That's one bad lawsuit. If we could institute security measures that prevent one bad lawsuit, it pays for itself. You know, we deal with the legal fees, and we've had to, you know, go to closed session and talk about a lot of things over the last few years, and it is a big price tag. You know, I do get a little sticker shock, and it is taxpayer dollars, but at the same time, I really appreciate Mr. Byrd has presented here, and I'm supportive of doing something to drastically increase the security for our staff and for the public that visit these buildings.
Any other comments? Commissioner Andrews.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to make sure I understand what's in front of us. It seems that you made the point that people-driven technology is akin to Cunningham Lamp and Owner's Rep. I read their packet, and I can't see how they get paid. There's no documentation about, I mean, we understand there's a percentage when we hire Cunningham Lamp, but as I understand it, the way it would work is PDT would go out and set some standards and design a system, and then they would bid it out. So we're not going to know what the cost is until we're 6 months, 9 months down the line with PDT.
So if we enter in a contract with them, and before we would, a new document like this one would be given to us, this is the price we would pay. We would pay People-Driven Technologies. They would go out to bid. We wouldn't pay any more money for the equipment or the installs. We're paying them. But the weird thing, it's not weird, the really neat thing they do is we pay them, but they go by our purchasing policies and our bidding requirements for the wiring, for the installs, for the camera equipment. And yes, they have targeted vendors, but they use our purchasing policies for that, which again, we couldn't find another representative in the security business that does what they do. So we would pay them and them only.
I may be the only one, but I can't see committing to $2.1 million without some sort of RFP. I just can't see how while I appreciate that they offer potentially a different strategy, and I still can't quite square it with the paragraph that says they guarantee discounted pricing and they would maintain transparency, and it looks to me like they're going to then, there's some additional, it doesn't quite make sense to me, considering the language and the presentation. But regardless, I just can't see how we wouldn't ask for both some competition on this issue, and then also, my understanding is that this buys us the hardware and the software, but we now have to manage it, just like we had a staff person here today who their sole job is to manage Workday. There's gonna be a long-term maintenance cost. There's gonna be software updates. There's gonna be and we have to wrap our arms around that before we can embark on buying the cameras, in my opinion, or deciding whether we want fobs or whatever, CAC cards or whatever. So I appreciate that this is a good start, but it feels to me like a starting point. I'm not prepared to just sign up with PDT without doing some bidding.
Commissioner Walter.
Yeah, I agree, and I think you mentioned, Mr. Byrd, that this came out of a discussion we had about some priorities, and I'd like to see some dollar amounts put on those. I can appreciate that this is, there's an economy of scale of all of these different departments. There's also departments that aren't on this list, that are in other buildings, and so I have interest in understanding that piece of it. But also, given our bigger conversations about facilities and new facilities, and maybe we're not even going to be at the governmental center in a few years, with all of these other major department moves happening, I'd like to see it broken down a little bit more, triaged into those priority areas. And then, what does it look like when we build a new jail potentially in a few years, rather than investing in the jail right now, because we've been putting some money into the security cameras there already. So I concur with Commissioner Andrews in a way that I'd like to see this broken down a little bit more, and would like to see more of an RFP process. And maybe people-driven technology at the end of the day is those cost-effective and fits our needs the best and is able to piece it out, but I don't think it's responsible just to focus on one company at this point.
Commissioner Flynn.
I also agree with basically everything that I said. I do agree that we do need to invest in the security for our staff and in the public 100%. But I do also prefer to see at least compare or see an extra layer of explanation of what the product would be or what we need in the future.
And we didn't go that far to doing demos, and they're not able to give us exact numbers until they can see building layouts,
right?
Which is why we didn't go into detail. There's not a new jail on here. But we didn't go that far because we didn't know what your guidance was going to be.
Right. I would like to see comparison to different options.
Mr. Henschel.
I agree. You've got to at least attempt to do an RFP, and it's possible that if these are the features we want in a vendor, we put that out for an RFP and they're the only ones that can fill it, then you've got a single source vendor, and per our policy, we did the due diligence, we were transparent, so we've dealt with this over the years. We find a vendor that kind of has something unique, but you still need to put it out there and see if anyone else can even come close, so we can say that we did that public process.
So as we walked through this process, it became very apparent that, the commissioners asked for something very specific in our way of thinking, and we went out and started exploring options and different opportunities, and we couldn't find that apple-to-apple comparison. So when we met a week or so ago, knowing that we were having this meeting, we felt it important to have this presentation to you, just to get the feedback that you just provided us, and we find that very valuable, and we'll move forward.
Well, it sure seems like a good start, but I don't know how you don't protect your employees and make sure they have the safest work environment that you can, however that is, whatever that rub is, or the cost, or, it's a lot of folks.
It is, and I agree, and while it kind of seems a little premature, I don't believe that it is. I mean, we talked about personnel expansion and leveraging technology, AI, and other things as we move forward. This is also, should be at the forefront when we're designing these places, and if we're moving, if we're not moving. But I do believe that if we're going to be responsible taxpayer, it's got to be a competitive process, for one. In addition to that, some of these things, this is a public building. So as we're talking about key cards and things like that, which I believe that we do need, the public should have unfettered access during business hours. And it's not we're buzzing you in, we're not, to let you in to do business. That's not ever going to, I'm never going to advocate for that. But after hours is a different story, and we do have things that are going on, and I commend Greg and the rest of the committee on that to bring it to the forefront. Because if you looked at the facilities management plan, whether we like it or not, the proposal in front of us today is 1% of that. So when you look at a basket full of apples, and like, hey, it was one apple over 3 years. So thank you for bringing us, for your hard work, everyone, on this, and we need to keep this in our forefront of our mind. Any last comments, questions, concerns for Mr. Byrd?
I just want to encourage that we get as full a picture as possible as to the total cost, not just the physical structure cost, because the maintenance, just like hiring employees, it has a legacy cost for us that we need to get our arms around before we move forward. I think risk avoidance is potentially the biggest pot of money we could just spend an infinite amount of money on risk avoidance, and that is a caution that I'm concerned about.
And I totally agree. And at the end of the day, no matter how much money you spend, it only takes one bad actor to go, oops, that didn't work. So, and history's full of examples in the last 3 years, so.
Since People-Driven Technologies obviously has done some work for public enterprises in our region, it would be helpful to see what those enterprises have paid total for their investments. I mean, if NMC hired People-Driven Technologies to install a system or TCAPS, that's public information. They should be able to tell us, what did they spend on their bottom line? How much did it cost?
Potentially. They may not willing to share that because
It's public. It's TCAPS.
It's public
security is
information.
not always public.
Well, it wouldn't be bad to know.
The
if-
dollars are public. Those are your tax dollars that TCAPS spent.
Wouldn't be bad to know if it works. They like it, don't like it.
Right.
Good system, not good.
Sounds like Mr. Bird has had a lot of those discussions.
We have not found any customer of theirs that do not give them a glowing, and all of their customers started out looking at a bid process, and this vendor fit within their justification for sole source vendor. And that was what, that was a big point with Mr. Forsyth. But we're happy to work on constructing an RFP. What I'd like to know is, do you want to try and see what the expense would be for us to own and manage the system in-house, or to third-party it out?
Well,
Yes.
is
those are
PDT
good-
proposing that they would then operate the system or own or software license the system?
I imagine they would find us a vendor that would monitor the system. And I guess further clarification, do you want us to explore the total system to include door proximity entry system, which it was never our intent to, do anything to fetter the public? Or do you want us to go back to the drawing board and just do camera systems? And I think that was what we were interested too. Like I said, we dug down into this all-encompassing system that gave us the best for our investment, but it was more than just cameras.
Yeah, I think our original conversation was around, some kind of hardening, for lack of a better term, for the front of the governmental center and the people safety on the first floor in particular.
Yeah, and by accident, that's what we found they do both.
Yeah, so that really doesn't have to do with cameras, right? That has to do with access to the building. So was the first impetus for this conversation, as I understand it, from last year, probably.
Hearing from our clerk.
Not
Probably a list of litany of choices is probably be the way to go, because we may find that there could be some tightening up. Cameras, people will tell you they prevent crimes, but they certainly are very helpful in solving them. And limited access is not necessarily a bad thing, especially after hours, and I think we could do some tightening up. And I think there are good and bad for hiring in-house staff to deal with these problems, as well as hiring vendors. So I think probably all of it is a good idea.
Yep. We'll see what
Thank
we
you.
can do.
We're gonna quick move on to F. Some of us got somewhere to be.
Yes. So just a very brief update on our budget process to date. We have corresponded with our elected officials and our department heads. We've laid a groundwork for the 2026 budget process, and we have told them that in anticipation of debt service and facility renovations, whether they happen or not, we would like to begin to prepare to be able to manage that debt service. So we've instructed them to look at their 2026 requests and correspond those requests to the amended 2024 budget, the expenditure line item specifically. I've not heard a lot of feedback about that. We have a managers meeting today. It'll be the first managers meeting that we've had. Actually, it's the second. But once we sent this form to them on May 5th, it's the first managers meeting we've had since this day. So I expect to have some feedback today on that. We didn't say don't submit requests. We said recognize that this is our goal, this is our objective. We believe that we can meet that. It's about a $49.1 million budget. Dean, is that close to accurate?
Yes.
From the amended 2024 budget, we're at about $52 million now. And what that does for us going forward is it level sets. It doesn't just continue to increase incrementally, and it allows us to capture some type of a debt service capability that we don't currently have. I wanted you to know that this process was ongoing. You know, they have these, we're using the forms again, that once they are able to click here, they populate these forms, they come directly to us through our Microsoft 365 account, and the form essentially requires that they link this to a strategic initiative, and they have to explain to us, how do you expect to handle any expenses that comes with a new request? Most of those answers are, what county's going to pay for it. You know, there's not typically a revenue considered in many of these requests. There are occasionally, but not as a general rule of thumb. So we will begin to collect these throughout the process. Dean, I asked Dean to give you a general idea of what the personnel costs alone for 2026 are estimated at, to give you an idea on the reality of the request.
So based on what we have budgeted for 2025, if we look at all funds, personnel costs, again, all funds is about 72.3 million. That would include all salaries, benefits, anything that's considered a personnel type expenditure. If I break that further down to the operating fund that we're, you know, that you would be most familiar with or concerned with in terms of that budget target, for the general fund, it would be anywhere from 31,250,000 to 32 million of that number would be personnel costs alone.
That kind of sets a stage that you've got about 17 to $18 million that we're going to be working with across the general fund appropriations for 2026. I think it's a good goal. It's a good place to start. We may not end there, but it's a good place to start as far as our framework on how we approach austerity measures for contemplated debt service. So I just wanted to update you on that. And if you have any feedback, great, love to have it. And the second question I have is, we were asked to provide department presentations to this board through this process. Do you want to pursue that at this point still, or do you want to do something different from the experience you had today?
I like it. I think it's good information, and information we would never get if we didn't have that conversation, I feel.
I agree.
I did appreciate the HR. I like seeing the staff and at least getting a picture of what, you know, what sort of the people in the department and their big picture budgets and their big picture issues that they're facing. I think that's really helpful context.
Yeah, I thought that was great too. I don't think I need like an overview of what they do. So maybe cut out that intro stuff. I think we all have a basic idea of what, you know, HR does or what admin does. I didn't really need to hear that, but get into the more nitty-gritty overall budget ramifications, goals, what you're looking at, big projects.
Staffing plans.
Yeah. The IT budget piece was particularly helpful too, something like that for everybody. And HR's like overview related to their data was also very insightful. So more of that rather than like, I don't need to know the mission statement so much.
And Dean's jokes were really good.
Yeah, I like the jokes.
That was
Jokes
nice.
are good.
That was a nice ad. Nice ad.
I'm not afraid of you anymore, Dean.
I still am.
But yes, I want to just confirm what everyone has said, just brass tacks. Like, I thought it was such useful information, but yeah, I agree. Like, we don't need to know what everybody does, but the needs and the shortcomings and the opportunities, I think that's all really good. Thank you.
Fantastic. Well, there you go.
Thank you.
Nothing else? Public comment. Anybody care to comment? Bruce, do you want Bonnie to read you the rules? Because you weren't here this morning, earlier?
Good morning. Bruce Moore. I live in East Bay Township. I'm in Commissioner Henschel's district. I was surprised in reading the packet at how high the turnover at the county is. And in In listening to the presentation this morning, I was also surprised that there is no annual review process. As an employee and a manager, it is a very tedious process. It is annoying. It is extremely useful. As an employee, that's when you have an opportunity to surface problems in a formal way that you know is going to be read up the chain. And it is also, it forces managers to recognize high-performing employees. When things are busy, managers tend to not pay attention to high-performing employees because they take care of themselves. And those are the people that usually leave because they don't get promotions and they don't get the recognition that they need. The other part of the review process is that it forces managers to confront problems. And that gives an employee, it forces an employee to get their act together or to get out. And the fact that there is no review process strikes me as a significant part of the turnover problem that the county has. Thank you.
Thanks, Bruce. Anybody else? Going once, going twice? Sweet. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
I'm sorry, Rob, was that?
You can just adjourn, you don't need a motion.
I know, but I like your response. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.